focus on, by creatures known as Clover, the invasion of Earth. The Cloverfield franchise is perhaps one of the most unusual, when the real origin of this species. From outer space. After 3 parts, it's still a mystery. Moreover, new questions are constantly being raised, even in different timelines and parallel universes. However, no matter how confusing, one thing is undeniable. Each story is told in its own unique way. Creative and engaging. And completely separate from other monster movies. Today, to continue your love for film focused, I'll tell you how the Blue Planet's Doomsday came to be, okay? It all started in 2008, in a luxury apartment in bustling New York. With the perspective of a handheld camera, we know that this timestamp is April 27th, and the guy named Robert just had a passionate night with a girl named Beth. They are laughing and having fun. They both then started going to Coney Island to have fun. However, the tape suddenly jumps, and the audience is taken to almost a month later, when Robert's brother, Jason, and his girlfriend, Lily, are preparing for a farewell party for his brother. You see, Robert is about to move to Japan to take a new job, and will be leaving New York for a while. Although he was tasked with recording his friends' farewells and family members, Jason quickly backed out, and he pushed it to HUD, another kind and close friend. The only problem is he has a habit of getting distracted, as well as his mouth never stopping talking. He just couldn't film properly. He kept pointing the camera at Melina, the beautiful girl he had a crush on. Lily sighed, because the host of the party was about to show up. He opened the door and walked in. Rock was happy to receive the gift that his friends had given him. Through HUD's hidden camera, we saw his face momentarily sad. He was waiting for Beth, and her appearance with another man answered all the questions about the story of their complicated relationship. It turned out that Cross and Beth only slept together for one night, knowing that he was going to be away for a long time. He didn't contact her again, because he thought that this relationship wouldn't go anywhere. Jason blamed his brother for being too cold, while not paying attention at all was Hub's mouth, which had already blabbed about his friend's bed story. However, this humorous atmosphere was quickly extinguished, because suddenly a loud noise broke out, followed by a citywide power outage for a few seconds. Frightened, Cross, Hub and Jason ran downstairs to the party, where the worry quickly enveloped the room. On the TV, the media reported that this was likely an earthquake, but the explosions that lit up the night seemed to say that it was something worse. Many felt that the situation was not good. The whole group decided to break up the party and went all the way down to the street to see for themselves. In the distance, a large cloud of smoke rose up near the entire city of New York. And below the road, hundreds of people were running away, not having found each other yet in the crowd. Suddenly another explosion echoed with a terrifying sound of a strange object flying towards them. It was round, and when zoomed in on the giant piece of metal, Hub realized that it was the head of the Statue of Liberty, with many chopped marks. Saving Melina, who was still in shock, Jason, Cross, Lily, and H quickly joined the crowd, running towards the Rockland Bridge to avoid the storm. This certainly isn't an earthquake. The military and police were also present, and their expressions only conveyed one thing. That is, the government was also helpless in the face of what had just landed in the city center. While walking, Cross' phone rang. It was Beth. After leaving the party, she had returned to her apartment. And if he's not mistaken, that building was right near the thick black smoke. Whether fortunate or unfortunate, but it was because of the call that the group slowed down. avoiding the disaster that was unfolding. A few seconds later, rising from the dark sea, a giant tentacle slammed into the bridge, causing it to shatter like a toy, taking with it the lives of the people walking forward. Everyone turned around in panic. Only the one, Jason's brother, was right in the striking range of the giant monster. Lily screamed in pain. In just a few tens of minutes, a party became hell. Cross was speechless. Maybe he went crazy. After witnessing his brother's death, he ran straight to the electronics store on the side of the road. Cross tried to swap SIM cards into another phone. He followed it on the TV news. For the first time, we saw a part of the giant monster, along with the massive army it brought with it. He listened intently to the voice coming from the other side of the line. What Cross was waiting for was Beth's voicemail, left before losing connection. After hanging up, it's unclear whether it was because of his grief over his brother's death that made him reckless, or true love actually gave people strength. But Cross made a decision that couldn't be more crazy. That is to turn back to the heart of the disaster to save Beth. And Melina, of course, objected. But Lily agreed to go with him. Maybe Jason's death also made her desperate. So reluctantly, all four of them escaped the military and ran back to their starting point. The rescue mission was not easy, as New York is now a battlefield with cannons and heavy tanks. Realizing that if they just stayed on the road, they would soon get hit by stray bullets, the group decided to run down to the subway station to take shelter. Melina huddled in a corner, while Cross called his parents to tell them the bad news. The farewell party ended up being the day he had to say goodbye to his brother. But he had to see Beth. Robert wiped away his tears and studied the map. He realized all four of them could walk along the tracks to get to the center. It was both fast and avoiding the giant monster above. So they turned on the flashlight from their handheld camera. The rescue operation continued. At times like these, Hub's talkative mouth became a pastime. Not bad, he and Melina got along quite well, reclaiming a bit of life from the current gloomy atmosphere. However, it didn't last long, because all four of them suddenly saw rats running past their feet. They looked very hurried, as if they were running away from something. Suddenly remembering the camera had night vision mode, the whole group was saved from a near-death experience. When they discovered behind them, there had long been a group of monsters following. They were only the size of a large dog, but they had many legs like spiders, and a mouth full of sharp fangs. Hub was the first to be pulled away, but Melina went back to save him, only to receive a bite right in the shoulder. The three who wanted to block it ran straight to the next station. They dodged the door of death in the nick of time, bandaging Melina's wound. Hub thanked her for coming back to save him, and the two shared an emotional moment. But sadly, her smile will be the only good thing the camera captures in this crazy journey. Finding their way up, the group followed the light and found a military base. Here, Melina began to show strange signs. She was trembling, dizzy, and worse, her eyes were bleeding. Realizing that the victim was bitten, the military immediately took her to a separate room, despite Hub and Cross trying to stop them. Through the dim light, we saw Melina's body explode. It splattered onto the white canvas. A painful ending. Terrified, the remaining three realized that life is so fragile. An officer then let them go and said the military would bomb the entire Manhattan if they couldn't kill the giant creature above. If you don't want to die with this city, Cross and his team had to catch the last flight at 6 a.m. After the death of 2 people. Cross thought that maybe he should go alone. But those words were too late now. Everyone had lost someone they loved. And this time, it was Hub's turn to volunteer for the rescue. Running through the streets. New York is now a ghost town. The white horse, like the mount of the Grim Reaper, flowed slowly, as a sign that the apocalypse had come. And indeed, the journey only got harder. When all 3 discovered that Beth's building was leaning against another skyscraper, the chances of her surviving are extremely small. They had no choice but to climb the stairs, all the way up to the building next door, hoping to find a way into Beth's room. Through nearly 60 floors, Cross finally found a spot where 2 buildings met. He jumped over the roof and found the right room number. Like a miracle, Beth was still alive. Although she was pierced by a long iron bar in her shoulder, Cross finally uttered words of love, which he could have said sooner. He pulled the iron bar out of Beth's body and followed the same path to go down. The rescue mission was successful. Below, the missiles continued to fall, while the monster continued to resist frantically. It's unclear what they had against humans. Following the lights, the group found their way to the military base just before 6 a.m. Lily managed to get on the helicopter, while Cross and Beth followed right behind. Only now did Cross feel somewhat reassured. The monster was still wreaking havoc on the city. A terrible barrage of bombs fell. And for a moment, it seemed as though the target had been crushed. Like a cruel twist of fate, the Clover suddenly emerged from the smoke. It struck the helicopter hard, causing it to lose control. They were lucky to survive the crash. Or rather, unfortunately, because they couldn't fly out of Manhattan. The end of this journey was predetermined. With a dramatic turn of the camera, it captures the entire form of the monster. Hub was flung into the air and died a sudden death. Cross and Beth only had time to take shelter under a bridge, leaving behind their last words. They embraced each other, saying their last words of love. Before the next bombing occurred, everything collapsed into the official beginning of the apocalypse. During the credits, we hear "is still alive," or "the monster is still alive," suggesting that all the bombs and bullets were in vain. The camera suddenly jumps back to old footage at Coney Island, where Beth and Cross had a fun day. Sure enough, disaster can strike at any time. And in the blink of an eye, all the people we used to know may be gone. Fast forward to 2016. We follow the second story of the main character, a girl named Michelle. She appears with a worried and sad expression. The wedding ring left on the table tells us that she's packing her bags to run away from her marriage. The reason is not revealed, and probably doesn't matter anymore. She keeps hitting the gas, following the road out of town. 10 Cloverfield Lane begins when Michelle's car suddenly swerves and crashes off the highway. She wakes up in a completely unfamiliar bunker. Panic sets in as she realizes her leg is injured, and she's chained up, unable to escape. She's surrounded by 4 cold walls, without a single window. After everything that's happened, Michelle can only sob in despair. But being a strong person, she quickly regains her composure. She grabs the 4-pole next to her and uses it to reach for things on the other side of the room. She reaches for the phone, but all her efforts are in vain, as there's no signal. At that moment, there's a noise from outside, the heavy iron door, and Michelle seems to hold her breath as she hears footsteps coming down the stairs. The door opens and a tray of food is placed on the floor. The owner of the bunker appears. He's an overweight middle-aged man named Howard. in a very strange way. He claims to be Michelle's savior. He says he brought her back from the accident, unlocked her chains, placed 2 crutches next to the bed, and then just left. Of course, the kindness of a stranger certainly couldn't win Michelle's trust. She tries everything to escape. She takes the handcuff key, sharpens one end of the crutch, then sets it on fire to create smoke, luring Howard back into the room. Michelle attacks him. However, because she's still recovering from the accident, she's quickly subdued and injected with a sedative. She wakes up again. These 2 strangers finally have a proper conversation. They continue to boast about being her savior. Howard explains that the world above is no longer habitable. He says the air has been poisoned. Alien spaceships are flying overhead, slaughtering anyone in sight. Of course, the story sounds like a B-grade sci-fi film, only making Michelle more suspicious. She thinks Howard is crazy. But then she discovers another man in the bunker, Emmett, and this kind guy confirms that the Earth has indeed become hell. Emmett is actually the one who built the bunker for Howard. So when things went bad, he begged to stay there with him. Still, Michelle is skeptical. But now, Michelle has no way to prove otherwise. So she goes along with these 2 strange men. She hobbles around the bunker, taking a tour. Howard is a smart guy who served in the military, so his outlook on life is quite extreme. He had prepared food and drinks, electricity, water, and even entertainment. At a glance, everyone is impressed by the bunker that he built to survive the apocalypse. Knowing Michelle is still suspicious, Howard brings her to the bunker's door, where there's a small window looking out. There's not a single person in sight, and on the left, you can clearly see the rotting carcasses of pigs. It's a reminder once again that the air outside has been poisoned. But Howard's crazy story becomes more believable over time. They go back inside to prepare dinner. All 3 of them share a meal together at the dining table in the living room. Here, once again, we see Howard's controlling nature. He has a fit twice and tells Emmett to shut up. Howard keeps reminding them that this is his house, and he saved their lives. So they should be grateful that they don't have to breathe the toxic air. Michelle can't take it anymore. She glances at the key ring hanging from Howard's belt and comes up with a plan. She deliberately teases the hot-tempered man to make him angry. And, while he's not paying attention, she quietly takes the keys without making a sound. And without wasting any more time, Michelle smashes a glass bottle over Howard's head. She throws things around, making a mess, and runs towards the door. Having seen Howard do it before, Michelle unlocks all the locks and is just a few steps away from freedom. However, at that moment, a strange woman parks her car in the yard. She's Howard's neighbor and asks him to let her stay for a while. Her rough skin is oozing all over. Just by looking, you can tell that this woman is just a few steps away from death. At this point, Michelle truly believes that the apocalypse has arrived, and, eager to be her savior, she stitches up the wound on the bunker's owner. They apologize to each other, and the tension in the air subsides. Howard shares that he has a daughter named Megan, but the fact that he only has a photo of her tells the whole sad story of his family. Especially, Howard also admits that the car accident was actually because he was in such a hurry to get back to the bunker that he hit Michelle's car, injuring her. They sympathize with each other. Michelle decides to stay in the underground house with her 2 new friends. Day after day, they eat, live, and do things together. When they're bored, they play games, watch movies, read books, and relax. And when she's alone, Michelle continues to dream of becoming a fashion designer. Life continues peacefully like that. There's no need to worry about running out of food or about what's going on in the world above. That is, until one day, the air system malfunctions. To get up there, they need to go through the ventilation shaft. And out of the 3 of them, only Michelle is small enough to fit through. Although a little worried, She still has to do it because oxygen is essential. Crawling through the narrow ventilation shafts, Michelle reaches a place that looks like the roof of the bunker. She restarts the air filtration system as instructed. She notices a small skylight next to her, looking out to the outside. Curious, Michelle climbs up to take a look, and discovers a shocking truth. Someone has tried to scratch help into the glass. Pleading for help. A gut feeling tells her something's wrong. Michelle rushes to tell Emmett, and shows him the photo of his daughter that Howard had shown them earlier. Now everything comes to light. Being a neighbor, the little girl immediately recognizes that the person in the photo isn't Howard's daughter, but the little girl who went missing 2 years ago. Michelle even finds an earring that matches the photo, covered in blood. Now, the chilling truth of the sick ex-military man's identity is revealed. Maybe because he was haunted by his family leaving him, Howard intentionally ran his car into Michelle, manipulated her, and trapped her in this bunker to replace his daughter. He dressed her in Megan's clothes, used food and shelter as tools to make others obey him. Howard wanted a new family, a family where he made the rules. A truly deranged and selfish person, determined not to bury his life in this place. Michelle and Emmett secretly make a plan. First, Emmett will tell Howard that he's worried the toxins from Michelle might contaminate the air filter system when she goes up to adjust it. Howard, being suspicious, throws all the bamboo blinds in the trash. That's exactly what they need. Michelle will sew a protective suit that can escape the toxic air outside. Then, with the strength of 2 young people, taking down an old man and grabbing his gun won't be difficult. But for a guy who built a crazy underground hideout like this, Emmett and Michelle probably underestimated him. One day, Howard asks them to help him move a barrel containing a strange liquid. They open it to find periodic acid, something that can eat away at human flesh down to the bone. Then, Howard has discovered the tools Emmett stole. He drops them into the boiling acid, whispering a threat. With a warning, Howard is playing with them like prey. At this point, Emmett confesses everything. He takes all the blame, saying he wants to be the master of the bunker and have the same power as Howard. Thinking he'll be spared, but without hesitation, the killer gives his neighbor a cyanide pill. And right after, he bathes his body in the corrosive solution. The plan has completely failed. Once again, we see Michelle shedding helpless tears. Just like at the beginning of the film, with her broken marriage, waking up in a suffocating prison, and when she's alone with the deranged killer. But like every time before, she immediately regains her composure. She's a very strong woman. It doesn't take Howard long to discover the protective suit. But that doesn't really matter anymore. She dumps the barrel, making Howard slip and fall face first into the acid. Michelle quickly grabs the suit and runs straight up to the roof through the ventilation shaft. Of course, Howard goes after her like a wild animal. He stabs wildly at the ventilation shaft, determined to catch his delusional daughter. But Michelle would rather die than be imprisoned. She puts on the makeshift protective suit and tapes it up tightly before approaching the skylight. Learning a trick from Howard, she sprays freezing liquid on the lock and smashes it. She successfully steps outside. All the sounds seem muffled inside the protective suit. She looks around. Not a single person in sight. She rushes to Howard's car. Michelle makes a fatal mistake when she catches her suit on something sharp and tears a big hole in her leg. She quickly pulls out tape to patch it up. The girl suddenly laughs at her own stupidity. Not a single bird is flying in the sky. And that proves that everything Howard said was a lie. She takes off her mask and breathes in the fresh air. This is probably the feeling of freedom. However, there's something Howard didn't exaggerate: the appearance of a mysterious force. In the distance, across the field, you can see strange spaceships patrolling the ground at this moment. The acid in the bunker eats away at the electrical wiring, causing it to catch fire and explode. Of course, the flames immediately catch the eye of the spaceship in the distance. It drops a mysterious creature onto the field, forcing Michelle to find somewhere to hide. She runs towards the car of the dead woman. Unfortunately, the anti-theft system goes off, attracting the strange creature. Michelle has no choice but to run into the wooden house. She accidentally discovers Howard's body lying on the floor. The acid has probably eaten away at the killer's brain. The monster is also there, and with its sensitive hearing, in no time, its mouth full of sharp teeth, is near Michelle. Luckily, Michelle remembers the key ring that she always carries with her. Just as she predicted, there's a car key inside. She unlocks the car, the sound distracting the monster. It's just enough time for Michelle to escape. But it seems like the creature isn't giving up on the young girl. From the darkness, a spaceship suddenly appears. It sprays a green, herbicide-like toxin. Even though she's inside Howard's truck, she can't escape. It extends long, skinny tentacles. The spaceship lifts the entire truck into the air. It's unclear whether it's a machine or a living creature. But at its core is a large mouth that wriggles, looking incredibly disgusting. Facing such an overwhelming force, Michelle gives up once again. It's unclear how many walls she's already faced. She's standing on the path to her own destruction, but once again, one last time, her will drives the young girl to fight back. She sees the bottle of liquor in the back seat. Michelle stuffs paper inside, lights it, and leans out. It's a beautiful action sequence. She throws the Molotov cocktail into the monster's mouth, turning the alien spaceship into a giant firework. She jumps into the remaining car. Michelle hits the gas and drives away from the deadly bunker. She drives away from the haunted 10, Cloverfield Lane. She turns on the radio. She unexpectedly picks up a signal from survivors. Humanity is still fighting back and has taken back the southern coast. Currently, Baton Rouge is safe, and Michelle can go there to hide. But the military is also calling for experienced fighters to join the battlefield in Houston to help humanity reclaim the blue planet. Hesitant between two paths, Michelle finally turns the car and heads straight for the front lines. Maybe she's run from too many things in her life, from her marriage to her fear, making her accept being imprisoned in a bunker. Unlike Howard or Emmett, now she's not afraid of the outside world anymore. She hits the gas and drives straight into the darkness, even though thunder and lightning still loom in the distance, along with the alien spaceships. Now, Michelle's mind is completely free. We say goodbye to the second, inspiring story. The Cloverfield Paradox takes us to a future timeline. Earth in 2028. Looking at the opening scene with long lines of cars waiting to refuel, we know that humanity is facing a serious energy crisis. If there isn't a solution soon, in just a few years, electricity will become a luxury. This puts a heavy burden on scientist Ava Hamilton and the crew on the Shepard space station, who are tasked with finding a permanent source of energy for the blue planet. It's built as a giant particle accelerator, but failure has been the only result so far. That's what the entire team has received, with an estimated only 3 more test runs possible with Shepard's remaining resources. This is the precarious situation of the third story, called Cloverfield Paradox, or the Cloverfield Paradox. Taking a look at the crew, we have Commander Keel. Below him is Dr. Monk and Engineer Mundy, and 2 physicists who are romantically involved, the Chinese girl, Tam, and the German guy, Schmidt. However, Schmidt often clashes with the Russian guy, Volkov, because both of their countries are on the brink of war. And finally, there's Eva, who still hasn't recovered from the grief of losing her child. Her husband, Michael, is currently a doctor on Earth, and he's always supported his wife on her mission to save humanity. The atmosphere on Shepard is tense right now, as the next test run is approaching. Volkov has prepared the compass. Eva, Mundy, Monk, and everyone else are in position. They start the accelerator. A beam of purple light runs along the space station. And following Schmidt, everything is going incredibly well. as the readings show 47,000,000 V of energy. Before they can celebrate, the machine suddenly shuts down, followed by a massive explosion. Noticing the machine is on fire, Tam and Schmidt quickly open the vents to put out the fire. Eva also immediately tries to figure out what went wrong with the test. Looking at the control panel, Eva's face suddenly turns pale. The space station. Shepard suddenly can't find Earth's location. That's right, looking out the window and on the radar, the entire crew can no longer see the blue planet in sight. Shepard is also drifting aimlessly. When Eva realizes that the compass has vanished, not a trace of it. It's an incredibly strange phenomenon. A sense of despair washes over the space station. But they don't have time to think long, because a painful scream is coming from the hallway. They go to find it and everyone's hair stands on end when they see a strange girl screaming inside the wall, with wires piercing her flesh. And even though they've never met her, she knows Eva's name. It doesn't stop there. Even more strange things are happening with the crew, starting with Volkov. After the explosion, he starts to feel something inside him. Looking in the mirror, one of Volkov's eyes suddenly shifts to the side. It causes his mind to become clouded. He steals a gun and almost shoots Schmidt, if not for a sudden seizure that occurs. He has a terrifying convulsion, blood pouring out uncontrollably. Volkov dies a sudden death as he vomits up a bunch of disgusting worms. They're the same ones from the cage that the crew brought with them from Earth to study. Completely lost, Keel can only look for answers from the strange girl who just woke up, named Jensen. She claims to be Eva's friend and says she was supposed to take the scientist's place on Shepard. The Eva that Jensen knows is still down on Earth with her family. It gets worse. The girl with the icy face reveals that Schmidt is actually a German government informant. Thinking the physicist messed with the experiment, Keel punched him a few times before locking him in a separate room. However, the cause definitely isn't Schmidt. The next person to experience these strange phenomena is Mundy. He's reinforcing the ship with a special compound. The engineer's arm is suddenly sucked into the wall. It's like a magnet. Keel and Eva rush to help, but when they pull their friend out, his arm is gone. There's no blood, no pain. It's all so clean that it feels like the arm never existed. But the crew doesn't dwell on it for long, because right after that, Schmidt sees the severed part moving on its own, like a snake down the hallway. The limb has its own consciousness, signaling that it needs to write something. It grabs Mundy's arm, a pen. Things get even more chaotic when it writes, "Autopsy Volkov." Reluctantly, they follow through. They discover that inside their teammate's stomach is the missing compass. And when they put it back in its place, the answer becomes clear. Earth slowly appears in a distant location beyond the sun. Schmidt understands that activating the particle accelerator has accidentally brought the entire space station to a parallel dimension, and it has turned things upside down. Or, reality has collided, causing strange events. Jensen is actually an engineer on Shepard in this timeline. If that's the truth, the German physicist believes that restarting Shepard again will reverse the process, and they can all go home. With her sharp observation skills, Tam quickly realizes the problem lies in the air system overloading Shepard, leading to an explosion. It only needs to be adjusted and the accelerator will work. Everything goes smoothly. The only thing is that an accident has taken Tam's life. Her room is flooded with water, and when the pressure blows open the door, the outside temperature causes everything to freeze instantly. Short on staff, the crew is relying on Jensen's help to reactivate the accelerator. But, realizing that if the experiment is successful, she'll be stuck in another world. Jensen has her own agenda. In this parallel universe, Eva's 2 children are still alive. So, Jensen is taking advantage of the mother's weakness to persuade her to stay on her Earth. It gets worse. In this timeline, the Shepard space station has exploded, so she also wants to take over the accelerator for her planet. Jensen's plan is getting easier as crew members are dying. During the restart process, first, the magnetic field suddenly increases, pulling Mundy in by the same compound he used to repair the ship. Following that is a CO2 explosion, knocking the space station off axis. They have to detach the damaged compartment so the ship doesn't deviate from its course. Keel sacrifices himself in the process. Only Monk and Schmidt are left. Jensen, holding a gun, knocks out Eva, and then shoots Monk. She's about to do the same to Schmidt, but luckily, the bullet hits a non-fatal spot. Finally, only Eva faces her friend in a completely different universe. After a tense struggle, Eva grabs the gun and shoots out the ship's window to suck Jensen and all of her plans into the vast expanse of space. Looking at the photo of her two daughters for the last time, Eva realizes that this Earth doesn't belong to her. This parallel world isn't her home, and whoever lives in that world isn't the family she once knew. She and Schmidt restart the accelerator. The perpetual energy source is finally formed, sending the two scientists back to their original timeline. They call mission control. They use the escape pods and re-enter the atmosphere of the blue planet. But Earth, at this moment, is no longer the place Eva knew. A giant clover emerges from the clouds. So, the day Shepard opened the door to two universes. It also created cracks in time and space. It has possibly opened a gateway, leading the strange creatures to Earth. In 2028, Eva's husband is hiding in a bunker with little Molly, whom he rescued when the hospital was destroyed. In 2008, the Clovers suddenly appear in New York. It leads to the deaths of thousands of innocent people. And in Michelle's universe, the strange spaceships have also arrived on the blue planet, spraying toxins and killing humans. The invasion isn't just happening in one place, but in many different timelines. The fate of the three parallel worlds is something we don't truly know. We only know one thing for sure. This is just the beginning of the real nightmare, and that's the entire story of the Cloverfield trilogy. It's tense, creative, and full of haunting designs. For the alien monsters, while the quality has dipped a little, it's undeniable that it's a franchise worth watching. And fans are always waiting for the next installments. To answer the question about the origin of the giant clovers, will humanity be able to fight back against the monster army? How can they win across all the parallel universes? We'll probably have to wait a little longer for the answer.